Hi everyone, welcome. Yep, just like it says here on the diagram, the system that we're checking in on is now 162 days of age. It's a worm bin that's got the European nightcrawlers in it, composting my kitchen scraps and other household waste. And the cool thing about this is that we established a nice pattern early on. We had started into a pocket feeding pattern, and we changed feedings every time, going in a clockwise pattern. In the early days, we didn't pay that much attention to the interval, but then we had settled into this really nice pattern of checking in every 10 days. And now it's been 10 days since the last feeding, which was the 16th feeding, which was actually the 4th lap completed of hitting 4 corners on each lap. And I think we had already talked about maybe, sending this system down the road of preparing for harvest. But to me, it seemed like we could probably still come in here with foods that might break down pretty quickly. So I figured, let's keep to the thing that we've been doing, which is giving them a little pile of bedding to play in each time, and then the worm chow could be their feeding, and it won't be in a pocket anymore or in a corner. We'll transition to feeding in the middle and feeding only with chow for a little while. But I believe we could do that for another couple feedings and maybe continue with our 10-day check-in intervals. And that'll allow us the opportunity to see how some of these long-term objects in the bin are coming along. Because we've got stuff like the stem of a pumpkin, we've got other things in here which are not nearly as slow composting. But some of the things have been in progress, breaking down for weeks, if not months. So what we did here was we tried to compensate for what we thought might be a deficiency in bedding. So we went really generous. We went ahead and we grabbed a bunch of my pre-made bedding over here, shredded paper, cardboard, leaves, things like that. And we rested it on top of this piece of paper towel right over here. So, whether or not worms made their way into it, I don't know for sure. I think I had really meant to use it as a sort of almost like a sponge, like something to hang on to the moisture. Because I did the first application of those mosquito dunks solution in here. I dampened all this paper on top, and the paper towel beneath all the shredded newspaper and cardboard was meant to sort of be that last avenue of defense to capture any of the drippings that didn't get caught up in the shredded paper. And being under the plastic, that pink piece of plastic covering that we had out here, my assumption is that the BTI solution has now had a chance over the past 10 days to work itself into the system. For anyone who doesn't know, that BTI is a bacteria. Mosquito dunks is really just the manufacturer's brand name for this stuff, but it's just a bacteria that is really for mosquitoes. That's why it's branded as mosquito dunks, but it also is meant to help control other things like gnats. So my hope is that it's going to work here too. A lot of people have used it and said that it's worked well for them, so I'm pretty optimistic. So my idea here was today, stick to the plan of, feeding them with chow. I thought about even adding more bedding, but there's just so much of it here still that I don't think it's going to be necessary to do so. The bedding, I guess, will be good with what's here. All we'll do is we'll sprinkle in the worm chow, but that means the last feeding is now not going to be in a corner anymore. It's going to be right there in the middle. So that means maybe our coffee filter has to be spread out open and rest out and have it rested out over the middle to indicate to us where we last fed. So this will be today's feeding of worm chow will be feeding number 17, and the diagram that you saw earlier is really just meant to act as a diagram to show that in this corner down here, it's the feeding that came prior 10 days ago of some cabbage leaves and some coffee and some worm chow. And then, as you can imagine, going counterclockwise, you get to the previous feedings as well as the counter, the number next to each of them, indicating how many days certain things have been in here. Pumpkin stem, for example, look how long it's been in here, 148 days. That's probably still pretty much intact, but it is getting pretty weathered. So I've just got this feeling that those cabbage leaves that we threw in here last time are not going to have many leftovers, but there were some stems too. So besides the leaves themselves, there was also the stem of the cabbage, which was, yeah, I chopped it up into these little bite-sized pieces, so to speak, bite-sized for you or me. Any one of them would be a pretty good-sized chunk for a worm to work on, but as a team, these little guys look like they've whittled them down quite nicely. Oh, we actually found a chunk here left over. Cool. I had a feeling that maybe a couple of these larger pieces would still be here for us to look at 10 days later, but the leaves that were placed in here on top of all that stuff, those are history, and that's not a surprise. So that's cool. They're enjoying the coffee, obviously. I mean, not coffee, the cabbage, but there was coffee in here as well as chow. All these things that begin with the letter C, right? Wow, there is a lot of worms in here. Look at that. Crazy. Yay, it's fun, right? It's so cool checking it out when they come for the latest feeding, and it's a feeding that they can really, dig into, like the cabbage. Stuff that, almost immediately starts breaking down in the worm bin so the worms can take advantage of it. What is this? More cabbage? An actual piece of leaf. Cabbage leaf? Look at that. Who would have thunk it? All we have to do was dig down just a little bit deeper. Maybe it's because it was resting up against a piece of cardboard or paper or whatever it is that was right, whatever this was, that was right next to it. Wow, busy corner. That's pretty neat. So let's just make sure we've taken that cabbage leaf, and I think we already took all those other chunks of cabbage too and dropped them back down in the hole. Is that right? Did we? We must have, because I don't see them anywhere. Because I like the fact that we can kind of return everything more or less the way we found it back to that corner. And today it was 10 days, but next time we check in here, if God willing, we're able to check back in here 10 days from now on schedule to see how things are progressing. We'll focus on giving them the feeding down the middle as we've sort of decided to do at this point, but it'll still let us check in to see how, at that point, how 20 days has fared on the cabbage. I've got a feeling 10 days from now we're not going to see anything in that corner anymore. Maybe just a whole bunch of worms. All right, so going back one more corner here. Here we had put in broccoli and banana peels. Broccoli, I don't remember us seeing any sign of last time, 10 days ago when we were in here, but there were a couple banana peels from what I remember. Some leftovers. There's some, oh, look at that. There's the stem of a banana. It also looks to me like we've got a good amount of, like these must be coffee filter, I believe, just scraps of paper. Stuff thrown in here as bedding for these little guys. This stuff might be cardboard. It feels a little thicker. But if the banana stems are already that far broken down, then it seems unlikely that we would find any of the actual peels anymore. And that kind of makes sense, right? That goes back 20 days. Definitely no broccoli, though. I think that was the signature item put in here. But the broccoli was definitely not expected to last very long. Okay, moving on. What do we have in here? So this is the corner that we made reference to earlier when I mentioned the pumpkin feeding and the stem that was included. And in that corner, 148 days, man, that's getting up there in age, right? So the other stuff that came into this corner later, after the pumpkin and its stem, were some orange peels. And last time we checked in, we were still getting that nice, pleasant, citrusy scent out of this corner because of leftover orange peels that were still getting worked down. But as far as the actual peels themselves, I don't think we saw too much of it. We definitely smelled it, but we didn't see any of it. A little bit surprising how much moisture is in this corner too. It's kind of cool, considering the stuff that was put in here, stuff like orange peels and stuff like that. And just for the record, for anyone who's wondering, yes, I can still smell citrus. Oh geez, but here again, this is the main event here. This is always the sort of crowning object in this system to be checked in on each time. Last time I gave it a little bit of a squeeze and the whole thing seemed like it was going to crack down the middle, so I don't want to mess with it. It's just that this bottom side of it I'm curious of, because it's just always been hard. Still very hard. Incredible. This top section of it, I've already been able to chip pieces off of it weeks ago already, months ago even, I believe. The top of it was starting to break down to the point where chipping off bits of it was pretty easy, and I think a few pieces even just chipped off right there, just from us messing with it. So let's not mess with it any further. Let's get that pumpkin stem back down in there, and I didn't see it, but I definitely smelled it, so there's still some orange peel and who knows what else still in there as leftovers. Did I just see a cocoon? I might have been imagining. Now there it is. It's on my fingertip now. That was interesting. It's incredible how my eye has come kind of accustomed to almost looking for them passively, because I wasn't like looking for cocoons. I just kind of reached over there and I saw it. I wasn't looking for it. And there was a time when I used to get really frustrated because I would look and look and look and I would never ever see them. But now, I don't know. Now I've sort of gotten used to what I'm looking for. Well, you know what? Let's take a peek down in this corner, because in here, potato peels, asparagus, the things that were fed in here last time, I seriously doubt we're going to see any leftovers of 40 days later. Especially if they were things like potato peel or asparagus. Although, you know, the peels themselves we might have seen a little bit of. But on the subject of peel, here it is. This is what I was kind of expecting to still see in this corner, because the signature item for this corner was the 2 avocados that had been placed in here opened, minus the seed, but all the fleshy part of the, you know, avocado was still in there for them to eat. And in the end, we ended up smearing all that inner material, the pasty parts of it, around. But there's still good amounts of this shell floating around in here. It's going to need some time to break down, but it's really brittle, and it definitely goes over time. But I try not to break stuff up too much in systems like this where we're really interested in seeing, especially when we've got specific, you know, ages on stuff, how many days they've been getting worked by the worms. It's much more interesting, I think, to see what the worms have accomplished in that much time, with me, you know, minimally aiding in the deterioration or the breakdown of that stuff. So here again, you know, if there's an avocado shell or something still floating out on the surface over here, it might do better a little bit submerged, so I'll try to get it down into the material. But other than that, I don't know what else we might find in that corner as leftovers. Probably nothing. And that just gets us to feeding, you know, finally. So it's just always fun to see how these corners are doing, knowing how old they are at each point, knowing what had been placed in there, and being able to see what those particular items look like after time has passed is always, at least to me, interesting. So let's get this thing fed and dampened, because the that BTI solution that we're going to be putting in here again, it's already now had 10 days to take effect, and I don't know what the life cycle or ages are of flying insects that we're trying to cope with in my systems. So I don't really know when that next generation that we're trying to knock out would be expected to come online, or when the current generation of these little insects is, I don't know, reached old age or whatever, and they just keel over because of old age or whatever. I don't really know what the story is with these little insects, but it does somehow seem like there's not many of them, if any of them. I do see, okay, I do see it here. Here and there I see a couple little critters moving around, but somehow not nearly as intense as I've seen in the past. So yeah, I was making grit yesterday while I was messing around with my eggshells to be pulverized. I bent back my fingernail. Ugh, it hurts just to think about it. And yeah, as you can imagine, it hurt when I did it, but I just wanted to cover it up with a band-aid just to make sure I don't bend it back again, because you know how a nail is after it's been bent back. It's already kind of weakened a little bit and vulnerable. So I'm trying to remember now, had we cinched in the... Yeah, did we or didn't we? I can't remember. Or is it even necessary? I don't know, I think we may have already started pulling the plastic coverings back from the edges a little bit, just to permit the system to be able to shed off a little bit of its moisture. But when we went picking through here, to me it somehow seemed like everything was really nice. Somehow in the pumpkin corner, orange corner, it did seem like things might have been a little bit more damp than I was expecting them to be, but that's probably not an earth-shattering issue, so I'm not going to sweat it. But that brings us to the end of this check-in with my 162-day European nightcrawler system getting its now 17th feeding of chow. So I'll be updating my spreadsheet to show that that's what they got over here. And usually I'll come back in here and say, hey, I didn't see any cantaloupe when I last checked in, and I'll cross off those things that appear to show no signs of leftovers anymore. So cabbage, we still saw some, we'll keep it there, right? But this stuff, I don't know. I'll take care of that on the computer when we're done here. So that's it for the video, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please remember to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. If you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.